This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, Battlefield Lombardi. Tonight, even though EA is saw fit to continue to screw us and make us wait a whole another month, it would seem, for Madden, we're doing what we can to get rolling. And we have a very special guest tonight. Our commissioner and leader, Hacksaw, is joining us tonight. Hack, how are you this evening?
Good. How you doing? Good to
I'm
be
pretty
here. Thanks
well,
for
pretty
having me.
well. Yay! I'm glad to have you here. It's nice to put a voice to the name. But
Yeah.
But to let everyone know, the way we do this, if you're new or don't remember, we go team by team. I've got a few categories I've picked out for things I'm going to say about each team, and Hack will chime in to either tell me when I'm wrong, agree with me, or however he sees fit to respond. So without further ado, let's jump into it. We're going to start in the AFC over in the East with the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, they're run by Phil, or Phil and the Fins, whatever you want to call him. His previous team in last Madden was, of course, the most intelligent creature in the sea, who's also known to rape otters, which is, of course, the Dolphins. And what I expect from them this season, all the speed in their wide receiver core is going to make life hell for opposing AFC defenses. Waddle and Fuller lead the way in what I think is going to be possibly the highest scoring offense in this first season. Most of us won't have a defense flexible enough to match up with what they've got, and it's just going to be a pain in the ass to play them this first year for sure.
Yeah, I think Phil is the team to beat in the East. I have never seen the Pats play, but Phil has gotten really good over the years. We've been playing together for, what, 10 years, I'd say, and he's gotten better every year and every year.
Yeah.
He
I mean,
was
he may not.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say he was taking care of Rain for a while there.
Yeah. I think he really put his name on the map a bit too at the start of last Madden when he knocked off Chris, that dude, in season 1, which, you know, seemed like a big upset at the time, but I mean, it's kind of consistent with he's been right up there as a playoff team since then. But,
yeah.
To start with player, I think they would be a fool to trade. I think it's obviously going to be Waddle. He's got this, you know, the base as a youngster to be Tyreek Hill like within a season or two. I think you got to invest in him. No trade offer could pry him away if I had that guy.
Yeah.
Player they should. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I said that's true.
Yeah. Player they should trade. Honestly, I'd trade Tua. His arm is weak, and I think that's going to hinder getting the most out of those fast wide receivers when your quarterback only has 88 throwing power.
I don't know about trading him.
You know, I mean, he's got some good attributes, but that lack of throwing power just bothers me.
Yeah.
And then, do I consider them to be a contender, pretender, working to get better, or bless your heart, you tried? Even with me not liking Tua, I've got to call them, especially in season 1, a contender. All that speed of wide receiver. They've got 2 top-notch cornerbacks in Howard and Jones. That roster's ahead of the curve of most of us as we look to build our teams the way we'd like to see them.
I'd have to agree with you.
Yeah. As far as their ceiling, so I'd say I think they can win up to 14 games and get to the Super Bowl. Phil knows how to ball, and I think he's got a head start on most of us with where this roster begins. As far as their floor, I think even if everything goes wrong, they're still probably winning 10 games and coming into the playoffs as a wild card team. But they'd probably be a one and done in that case if it doesn't go well. And I think that happens if they keep Tua. I really do think they should move on from him.
Yeah.
All right. Jumping right on to the New England Patriots. Brandon, or also known as Tuna on Discord, his first season with us. So his previous team, he just referred to him as fresh meat. What do I expect from them? You know, it's really hard to say. He's got a good O-line, a decent group of DBs, and a rookie quarterback. I think these strengths will be critical to lean on, as, you know, his team is a bit slow compared to his division rivals.
Yeah, he keeps saying he's traded for some running back I've never heard of.
Yeah, Christina McCaffrey or something like that. Something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I've never heard of her, so I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out. Who they think they would be a fool to trade? I don't think there is one. I think there's a lot of old good players, and they don't really have any rookies that I'm terribly excited with. So I think, selling some solid bets to get some younger talent or draft picks wouldn't be such a bad idea. As far as a player they should trade, honestly, I got to look at Stephen Gilmore. He is their best player, but you still got Devin McCourty and cornerbacks J.C. Jackson and Jonathan Jones. So you still got a solid core of your secondary, even if you trade him. And I think you're going to get, the most you can out of any potential trade piece as you would with Gilmore.
Yeah, that he would. Yeah, he should trade him. Trade him to the Cardinals.
To the Cardinals, do you think he'd fit in well there?
Yeah,
I hear they do have a lot of older vets there. It's true. And that warm weather is
yeah,
nice.
right.
As far as contender, pretender working to get better or whatnot, I think they're definitely working to get better. I've seen a few games from him. I think he's got the potential to be a consistent playoff team, but there's a lot of work to be done with that roster before you can be anything more than that, I believe. As far as their ceiling, I see 11 or 12 wins and a wild card berth, maybe get into the divisional round, and that's if the right trades are made. Especially if Mac Jones develops ahead of schedule and they get a few breaks. As far as their floor, I still think they're clocking in at 7 or 8 wins, just outside of playoff seeding. But that might not be such a bad thing if they're going hardcore rebuild and selling off a bunch of those vets to invest in the future. Like, you have a lot of L's, but if they grow those youngsters and get a top 10 draft pick, they could be in a very different situation going into season 2.
Right.
All right. Moving on to, hold on, having a dog issue here. All right. Moving on to the north here. We'll jump into the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I'm not entirely sure how I'm supposed to pronounce. Name there, T. Willfinger or Twillfinger. But I'm just gonna call him Finger. And the previous team was also the Steelers. What do I expect from them? Finger knows his boys, and I expect this defense to be among the best in the league. But I don't think the pieces on this roster are there for the running game to be how he wants it to be. As far as a player they would be a fool to trade, I'm saying middle linebacker Devin Bush. He's a missile and a great compliment to TJ Watt, and really gives this defense the base they need to be one of the best in the league. As far as a player they should trade, well, I don't think they'll do it, being that, Finger loves his boys, but I think they should trade Juju. Madden gives him low with 88 speed. He's still a good receiver, but you've got Chase Claypool and Deontay Jones, and if we're up to me, that would make Juju expendable.
Yeah, I don't think he would go for that.
No, probably not, but that's what I'm here to stir up controversy and
Right.
tell them what they should do. As far as contender pretender, we're going to get better, bless your heart. They're definitely not working to get better category for me. There's not much of an O-line. Plus, they got young RBs with no real elite speed options to give the ball to. Plus, I'm going to assume this is Big Ben's final season under center. So the offense could look very different a season from now. Their ceiling, given all these issues, I think is 9 or 8 wins and getting into the wild card. And that's going to take their defense stepping up and probably scoring some points for that to happen. Their floor, being the other teams on their schedule, what they got to deal with and their issues, I'm going to say as low as 2 to 3 wins. Not saying it's bad, but it means you're drafted in the top 5 for sure, and that could get you your franchise quarterback. So, I'm not saying they are tanking or that they should, but I could understand it.
Plus, he's in a tough division too.
For sure. Yeah, it's because you got to deal with the Ravens. Lamar Jackson is a demigod, and then the Browns have a decent coach too. So
Yeah.
speaking of those Ravens, they're going to run by John Charm City Flock, as his name is. Previously with the Broncos. What do I expect from them this season? A lot of Lamar Jackson to Mark Andrews. John's historically thrown to his tight ends a lot, and Andrews is a real quality one, so I see no reason why that hookup isn't going to happen early and often most games. A player they'd be a fool to trade. It's, not really a stretch here, but I mean, it's obviously Marquise Hollywood Brown. He's the burner who just affects how you have to defend them. You've always got to worry about getting beat over the top, because if you're putting that spy to Lamar Jackson, you're automatically at a disadvantage of trying to double him over the top. As far as a player that they should trade, I mean, their punter is like way overrated in Sam Cooch, so I'd probably go ahead and move him if you could. I don't know who. Maybe you could perhaps tempt Hayes into some type of deal there. He does like to pull it. And they can rely on Justin Tucker to pull double duty. I mean, no reason not to get one of these, thirsty trade bitches to make a deal. As far as being a contender, pretender, working to get better, I think they're working to get better. Lamar Jackson and Hollywood are a dynamic tandem, but I think they're definitely a player or two away from being a consistent threat week in, week out. As far as their ceiling, yeah, like I say, 10 wins and a wild card win. And that's if you keep Lamar Jackson healthy, and I think that's a very realistic possibility. But their floor, and this is assuming you have any issues getting Lamar Jackson going, or God forbid he gets injured, and given the fact he's going to see Myles Garrett twice in the season, that could definitely happen. They could be staring at, a top 10 pick in the draft, only getting around like 5 wins or so. And it could be a rough season for them if that happens. But I mean, they're in the same division as the Browns. This is just life in the North.
Yeah, they've got a real tough division to deal with, and that dude is ridiculously good.
Yes, he is. And speaking of him, he's next on our list here at Cleveland. Previously with the Jaguars and winning all but one of the Super Bowls in last Madden. So what do I expect from them? Mostly a wave of broken bodies and general destruction. I mean, he's a favorite till someone proves otherwise. There's just no doubt. As for a player they'd be a fool to trade, that's really not applicable here. I mean, maybe if you trade Chubb and Hunt, they may have a challenge of moving the ball on the ground, which I highly recommend if you really wants to prove how good he is. I give away both those running backs for pennies on the dollar and show that he can do it with somebody who's like a 60 overall running back. Really show us something.
Yeah, I agree. He should do that. Definitely do that.
As far as another player they should trade, honestly, I'd trade Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, they don't really need him. And they could get another killer for the defense. Because everyone knows he pretty much needs one lead receiver. And you've already got Landry, and he's good enough to fill that role. He doesn't really need 2 studs there to execute his offense. As far as a contender, pretender, or whatnot, we're just going to skip that question with him. Their ceiling, 20-0, because it really could happen unless, one of us proves otherwise. His floor, though, there is a chance he can play a lot of Call of Duty or Madden on the PS5 could bring him down a notch. And if that happens, he's definitely susceptible in the divisional round to the Dolphins or Titans. So hopefully he plays a lot of Call of Duty, but we'll have to see how that goes. Moving on to the South, one of the teams that we mentioned as being one of the main threats to the Browns this season is going to be TG Pote 2 is the name he goes by, previously with the Vikings. And what do I expect? They're going to have a dynamic offense. Tannehill's capable at quarterback. Derrick Henry, he's got Julio, A.J. Brown, solid offensive line. this is going to rival the Dolphins for I think will be the most explosive offenses in this first season.
Yeah, and he's so good at mixing up his play calling too.
Yeah, definitely one of those guys that you don't necessarily know what's going to happen each play. So you got some who are really good at just down our execution that even if you know what's happening, it doesn't matter. But you can't even expect that with Pote here.
Right.
As far as the player they'd be a fool to trade, I'm going to go with their young cornerback, Caleb Farley. He's got a special combination of his speed, acceleration, and agility, and change of direction are all at least 93. So, I mean, this is a true lockdown talent, and I'd commit to him long term as soon as I could. As far as the player they should trade, I gotta say Julio. You know, he's a stud right now, but he's not going to be for long. And you've already got Henry and AJ Brown. You really won't miss him if you get rid of him.
No, send him back to Atlanta. TG, send him back to Atlanta.
I'm fine with that. I'm good. As far as the contender for sure. Probably the team most likely than the Browns to lift the trophy at the end of the season, as this offense is capable enough to deliver that in season one. They're ceiling north of 14 wins and get to that Super Bowl, but that's going to be if Tannehill pulls his weight and the linebackers shine on this defense. I think they'll be one of the keys to how well they perform. Their floor is at worst, I think, 10 wins and still winning a playoff game. Even if it's a tough season or like Tannehill proves to be terrible, they've just got too much talent and skill overall to fall short of the second round of the playoffs, I believe.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, moving on to the franchise that basically won all but one of the Super Bowls last time, now has a new owner in the Jaguars. FB66 taking him over, previously with the Bengals. As far as what I expect from them this season, Travis Etienne Jr., as if y'all don't already know, we're not going to have pre-existing injuries on when we kick off. And this is the team that's probably going to benefit that the most from them because he's already out for this year in real life. He's going to be available. And given FB's history of bludgeoning defenses into submission with Joe Mixon, this Etienne is definitely built in that mold. And plus, they've already got James Robinson there. That could be a phenomenal 1-2 punch. And I'm going to say right now, they probably lead the league in rushing. As far as the player they would be a fool to trade, wide receiver DJ Chark. He's got all the size and speed you can ask for in a number one. And with the running game they have, the play action opportunities for him are going to be fantastic.
Yeah, he's good. He's been on NCAA. He always used to run that wishbone, and that was a pain in the butt.
Yeah, it is. As far as a player they should trade, I think they should deal one of the other receivers, either Jamal Agnew or Philip Dorsett. They've got speed that someone's sure to covet and pay well for. And you've got Chark. You're going to run the ball heavy. I think there's be a good idea to move one of these two burners and perhaps, you fill some of the other holes on your roster or get a quality draft pick in return. As far as contender, working to get better, bless your heart, you tried. I'd say they're definitely in that, working to get better category. It's a super young team, but they do have a franchise quarterback, it looks like. Some great players on defense. They'll probably be team you probably beat this first season, but they're going to develop quickly into someone that you really don't enjoy playing by season 2 and 3. Their ceiling, I'd say 10 to 12 wins this season. And that's, if they get that running game going and Lawrence progresses well, they could be a little bit ahead of schedule and be a bit of a headache come the postseason. Their floor is as low as 5 or 6 wins, though. Because still, despite all this young talent, James Robinson is their highest rated player. And he's kind of darn slow for running back, even though he's a really good physical talent. So if Lawrence has some growing pains, this could be a tough season. But I still think brighter days are ahead for their offense. So, 1 second. One moment, people. Upstairs. Upstairs. Go. Right. My apologies. Dog's not obeying my children. All right. And we are onto the West now. And the Kansas City Chiefs, TKR31, previously with the 49ers. As far as what I expect from them this season, Mahomes and Hill will naturally be a big part of what they do. And so I expect whoever the future running back is will balance them. As a TKR, he's had a pretty good history of running the ball consistently as well. So I think this will be definitely top 5 offense in the conference. A player they'd be a fool to trade, giving up either Hill or Hardman. I mean, that's a 1-2 punch that currently nobody can match. I mean, they're both a threat every play to get over the top. So I'd keep on both of those guys no matter how much I offer them or someone else does. A player they should trade. I don't think there's really a terribly obvious choice in this roster, but I'd consider offers for Travis Kelce. He's a great piece, but the offense can still be dynamic without him. And if you get a good piece to add to your defensive front 7, I can see it potentially making sense.
Yeah, his defense needs help, so I would definitely trade Kelce.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get a star in that front 7, it could be a really good deal. As far as contender, pretender, working together, bless your heart, your tried, I've got to call him a pretender because I think they'll win a bunch of games, maybe even the division. But I think the running game lacks whoever the guy they need to be the man right now. And given the holes here and there on defense, I just think when they face the top teams come the postseason, it's just gonna be too much for them to handle. As far as their ceiling, I clock them in at 11 to 13 wins, making it to the divisional round perhaps. Because Mahomes and Hill can get you that far, but past that, you've got to have a little bit more to deal with the Dolphins, Titans, and Browns of the world. Still, their floor, I'd still put as many as 9 wins and possibly making a wild card. Flatly, Mahomes and Hill is still just too much talent to think they're not going to be a plus 500 team. Plus, they still got the Honey Badger on defense, and he's probably alone good to win 1 or 2 games all by himself. All right, moving on to the Chargers then. Sean running the Chargers this year. Last season, the defending world champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers is where he resided. Or what I expect from them this season. I expect Sean to probably change his team 1 or 2 more times before we actually kick off. Possibly even in the middle of the game, given the history thus far since we drafted our teams. Not sure exactly how that'll work out, but I'm trying to be prepared for it just for future write-ups. As far as a player they would be a fool to trade, it's got to be my dude Derwin James. And I'm biased, but he's one of the very best defensive players in the game. Now, of course, if he'd like to work something out, my phone line is always open, and I'd be happy to entertain offers in case he wants to make something.
Yeah, he's known for making those blockbuster deals.
He has. So I'm kind of hoping there. As far as a player that they should trade, I've definitely got to say it'd probably be a good idea to deal either Keenan Allen or Mike Williams. Allen is better right now, but he's also 3 years older, and they're very similar types of players. And at the moment, they're nice tandem pieces, especially if you got a speedy slot wide receiver. But I'd lean towards moving one of them because you don't really have that speedy slot receiver on that roster, and maybe you can bring one in with selling one of these big possession guys. As far as contender, pretender working to get better, bless your heart, you tried. I call this another pretender. I think they got a lot of talent, and I think they'll win more games. enough games to surprise people. Well, while they're young at quarterback, and Herbert's a good one, I just don't think they're overall fast enough at the other skill positions, and their defense is going to have a hard time dealing with the Chiefs, I believe. I think those games will be really rough matchups for them, even with Derwin, because I just don't think he has enough help right now. Because simply James can't cover both Hill and Hardman. Their ceiling, 10 to 11 wins probably. And that's, if they commit to Herbert, he gets rolling. They've got the potential for a good future. And James and Bosa on defense are going to make big plays. So it could be a positive season. But as far as their floor, I'm saying around 6 wins. If they lack continuity on offense, lose Bosa or James to perhaps an injury, that could be a rebuild season and maybe even looking to try to get a top 10 draft pick. Any comments on the AFC, Hack?
That division, they should have some good battles. The Chiefs and the Chargers, they should have some good battles. So might be a toss-up for the division there.
Yeah, overall for the AFC, obviously the Browns are the favorite to make it the Super Bowl, but I think checking in right behind them is my power rankings released a couple of weeks ago will attest. I think the Titans and Dolphins are right there on their heels, ready to pass them if they get the right breaks. So maybe it'll be boring. Maybe the Browns will steamroll, but I'm watching the Dolphins and Titans as teams that I think could potentially take their spot. All right, jumping on to the NFC here. We'll start with the East. And the Washington football team still doesn't have a name, which bothers the ever-living bejesus out of me. I'm not another name that I'm really not sure how to pronounce. HTTR 6824. So I'm just calling him Hitter. Previously, still the team with no name. For what do I expect from them this season? Well, the defensive line from hell, of course. I mean, Chase Young, Montez Sweat coming off the edge, and 3 of the top 7 rated players in this roster are defensive tackles. I mean, how is this fair? As far as a player,
loaded on defense.
Yeah, especially that defensive line. I mean, you couldn't trade or draft this roster playing through. It's ridiculous. As far as a player, they'd be a fool to trade. I think it's a rookie who will really benefit from that line, and that's going to be a linebacker, Jamin Davis. Well, I doubt he needs my advice in this. Davis has 90+ speed and lots of size. I mean, he can be all over the place and just a real big problem, as you're going to have a hard enough time blocking this line. As far as a player they should trade, somebody on the defensive line. I mean, unless they're going to come out in a base 5-2, they're going to have a starting defensive lineman on the bench for every snap. So you might as well move somebody to make your roster better somewhere else. And as far as contender, pretender, we're going to get better. Bless your heart, you tried. I've got to actually call them a pretender because while they look great at times, they got a lot of talent. I think they're a season away because of the quarterback position. I mean, Fitzmagic is awesome, but I mean, they really would need to make a blockbuster deal to get a quarterback in the future before week 8. I mean, if that happens, that completely changes this projection. So with the defensive linemen, maybe, but for now, till that's happened, they're a pretender in my book.
Wow.
You disagree?
Brent, he's really hard to play. I'm sure I'm sure he'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Even with Fitzpatrick.
Fair enough.
I might be wrong, but
yeah,
I might be wrong, but he's really tough to play.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. As far as their ceiling, 15+ wins, and that's if they make a move at quarterback. If they get a quarterback that's a little better than what they got right now, they can most definitely make it to the Super Bowl. And you got to remember, last Madden, they did win Super Bowl #1, which I mean, history could repeat itself for sure. And even with the quarterback questions, their floor is still 11 or 13 wins. It's a roster that's just a problem to deal with and a good coach. I mean, by the time the first quarter ends in a lot of user games, teams are just gonna, the game is gonna be over. The score might not be out of reach, but it's just gonna be hell playing against this defensive line for a lot of us.
Right.
Staying in the East there, you got the Philadelphia Eagles and Chris Ashcraft, or that dude's son, as he's affectionately known. His previous team was the always second place Titans. And as far as what I expect from them this season, well, it's not the most stacked roster. Their wide receiver core with Ragnar and Devontae Smith has the potential to develop into a bit of a headache. So I definitely keep an eye on those two youngsters. As far as players they'd be a fool to trade, I'd stay defensive tackle Fletcher Cox. He's going to use her as linebacker as well. And having that beast like this in the middle is going to really free up his linebackers to make even more plays. As far as players they should trade, I'd move on from one of the defensive ends, either Sweat or Barnett. You've already got Cox on there. You've got Brandon Graham on the other side. And I think you can get some good value for one of them. And as long as they stay healthy, I don't think they'd miss it at all.
Yeah, plus he's the next draft, he's got all those draft picks. So he'll be taking advantage of those.
For sure. I got to imagine that might try to move one of those to either move up or, get another star player. As far as contender, pretender, working to get better, or bless your heart, you tried, I've got to call them a contender. Even with their youth and issues, and a quarterback that isn't a great passer. He's still mobile, which he needs to run his offense. They've got a solid offensive line, solid defensive line, the speed with the young receivers, and they're decent at cornerback. So I think that gives him enough edges that, he very well could be the NFC representative of the Super Bowl.
The Eagles and the Washington's going to be some must-watch games this season.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I really look forward to seeing those.
Yeah.
Their ceiling, I've got to say 14 or more wins and get into the conference championship game. And if Hurts has a good season and doesn't put the ball into danger too often, they're going to score points in the bunches. And there's going to be little teams can do about it. You will have to outscore them because I don't think you're really going to be able to stop them on offense. Is their floor? I still think you're talking about a 9 to 11 wins and likely a wild card berth. And that's even if turnovers are a problem. This roster is built pretty well for what he wants to do. And I mean, they're gonna make it to a couple Super Bowls. I'm gonna predict in this Madden.
Yeah.
And moving on to wrap up the East, we've got the Cowboys. Got some mixed feelings about this franchise, but another name that I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce, AAMU0608. I really need to get a phonetic guide from some of y'all on how to say your names to make my life easier in the future. So, Amu, I'm going to call it Amu for now. As the previous team, I'm not actually sure because it's been a while. He's been away for a few seasons, but he's rejoined us. And as far as what I expect from him this season, really uncertain. The offense has plenty of talent. The linebacker core is incredibly fast, but it's hard to say what we're going to see. Does he come back hungry and ready to deal with these, young cats we've added since then, or is he going to be rusty?
I'll be rooting for him.
As far as a player they'd be a fool to trade, I think it would be Dak. A lot of previous Cowboy users have traded Dak, but he's an overall solid quarterback surrounded by a good offensive line and good skill position players. And I would think this is a team to build around him, not to tear down and reset. As far as a player they should trade, I'd say the era of feeding Zeke is over. Pollard has better speed. He's faster. and I'm pretty sure somebody will overpay for Zeke in his collection of crop top shirts.
Yes, they would.
Yes. Perhaps he'll go to Arizona. Who knows? As far as contender pretender working to get better, I think this is a working to get better team, and that's largely because I don't know what Amu's going to bring this season. I won't be surprised if they come in and have a really hard time, but also with the amount of talent they have, if he comes in and takes care of the ball and plays well, they could find themselves easily, I think, in the second round of the playoffs this season.
Right.
So their ceiling, I mean, it's so wild. It could be anywhere from 10 to 14 wins. And I just base that off talent and all the uncertainty. I feel like this is a team that will probably lose some games they should win, but also win some games they should lose. And likely it'll go into week 17 before we know what their postseason fate will be. But if it all goes wrong, their ceiling, I'd say 5 wins or even less. Could be having to relearn the game. Maybe he goes and sets fire to the existing roster and ends up drafting the top 3. And if so, I think we can all blame this on Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
Moving on to the NFC North. We got the Green Bay Packers. And I want to pronounce this right because we've got one of the most regal sounding of names here. And I mean, I know his username is AllIn59, but Thaddeus Marshall. It's got that some specific panache to it there. Like, this is like the chairman at a country club or something. I think it's a very regal sounding name. I really like it. Previous team, I believe when he was born, he was the owner of the Green Bay Packers and always has been and always will be. I don't think he'll ever change. So cheeseheads forever. As far as what I expect from them this season, Aaron Rodgers to Devontae Adams, rinse and repeat. There will be drags, there will be posts, there will be streaks, there will be outs, play action, and enough Aaron Jones to keep you honest. As far as a player they would be a fool to trade, I think any of the DBs, Stokes, Savage, or Alexander. This is a really fast secondary, and you have that type of speed out there. You've got the flexibility to play a base defense and still be able to match up with a fast wide receiver core. I mean, this is a secondary of my dreams personally, because you don't have to accommodate basically what the offense does. You can play the defense you want to, and you're still going to be able to. As far as a player they should trade, let's just move on from Jordan Love. Someone will pay for a project quarterback, and the Packers can get something that'll help them win now, because we all know he's going to keep Aaron Rodgers for the next 5 seasons at least, even if he, drops into the 70s.
Yeah, and he never does. So Aaron Rodgers never retires. It's not fair.
Though he has showed up with a man bun in real life, and that could be bad luck. I've seen that doom many people in the past. As far as pretender working to get better, bless your heart. I mean, obviously they're a contender. They've got plenty of firepower, all that secondary speed, so you can just blitz with impunity and go cover 0 with minimal risk of beating over the top. They're definitely one of the favorites in the NFC to get to the Super Bowl. So their ceiling, north of 15 wins and get into that big game. I think as far as ready to win right now, I would place them as the favorite in the conference. And honestly, anything less than getting to the conference championship game, they'd have to view this season as a disappointment.
I agree with you.
For their floor, I'd still say 10 to 11 wins. And if you ask, how does this happen with as explosive as they are? An injury, or God forbid they trade Rodgers and go with Love. I mean, who knows? They could swing a blockbuster deal, get something great, commit to Love from day one, but Love's going to miss some throws, and there'll be punting, there'll be punts, and there'll be picks that wouldn't happen if they kept Rodgers. Still make the playoffs, but it would definitely become a rebuild season if that happens. Moving on to the Chicago Bears and Miami Black. Another guy dedicated to his teams, always. far as what I expect from them this season, it's the beginning of the Justin Fields era. I'm pretty sure he's not going to start Andy Dalton. I mean, there is a chance, but I'm going to assume it's the Justin Fields era. This is a quarterback that's beyond anything the Bears have had B4l before, and it could mean big things for him.
Yeah, he's got him and Green Bay always have it always comes down to the last play of the game, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's always a very tough guy to play, for sure. As far as a player, they would be a fool to trade. I've got to go with defensive end Keem Hicks. He's a good vet. You can get them good value for. With how slow their DBs are, and you got to give Khalil Mack a partner so teams can't just focus on him. As far as the player they should trade, I would sell one of your speedy wide receivers, either Goodwin, Perryman, or Bird. They've all got nice speed, but where they really need speed is their DB core. And if you can move one of these guys to get a defensive back, even a nickel back with good speed, I think it'd be a good investment. As far as contender, pretender, working to get better, or bless your heart, they're working to get better. The front seven will be nasty. The offense has some good speed around Fields, but they really are lacking a few pieces. Fields is still a rookie, of course, and the back end of that secondary. So I think they're probably a season or two away from breaking out from this rating. As far as their ceiling, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, their ceiling, I'm going to say 12 wins. I mean, Fields could be a star from the jump. And if they make a move to add to that secondary, this is the team that could easily make their way into the second round of the playoffs. As far as their floor, it could be 5 or 6 wins. And of course, that could be caused by bad trucks up Wi-Fi, trials of having a rookie quarterback, or slow defensive backs could make it a tough season. But this wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, as they've got, having Fields and getting an early draft pick could help vault them into contention next season. All right, moving on to the South. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, me, previously with the Chargers. What do I expect this season? Way too much passing, as I worry about not taking advantage of Brady before he turns 50. Player I'd be a fool to trade, I'm going to go with wide receiver Scotty Miller. While he's no Tyreek Hill, having him in there can help keep defenses on their toes and stretch the field vertical and give a little more space to the other quality pieces that don't quite have that elite speed to operate. Players they should trade, I'm probably say receiver Antonio Brown. He's a good player. They've got Evans and Godwin already. He's really expendable. Plus, I mean, bluntly, I've got to get Miller out there because of his speed. As far as a contender, where he can bless your heart, I'm somewhere between a twisted mix of pretender and bless your heart with this roster. There's a lot of good things, but a lot of the flaws worry me. I expect us to put up 40 points a lot of the time out, but I also expect that there will be games where we run the ball 5 times and turn it over 5 times. So it's going to be all about discipline, which season 1, getting used to it, I worry myself about.
I think you'll be fine. I think you'll be fine.
Our Sarah ceiling, we can win as many as 14 games, and that's a world where we're smart enough to run the ball more than we pass. If this happens, we could even reach the conference championship game. But our floor, we could be meddling around 8 to 10 wins. And that's if we get seduced by Brady and putting that ball up way too often. It's happened in the past where we could throw for 50 touchdowns, but have enough bad games, our playoff fate could be in doubt going into week 17.
Plus, you got to worry about Pitts.
Pitts? I don't know who that is. Pitts? I watched the game today. He didn't seem to be on the Falcons roster. I don't know.
Right.
All right, moving on to the Carolina Panthers and Hayes. Previously with the Saints, what do I expect from him? Front office moves, high fashion during the draft, and most likely regret expressed at some point for not returning to the Saints this season. As far as a player they'd be a fool to trade, they've got a lot of good young players, but I'd say free safety Jeremy Chin. He's got 93 speed, strength, catch, and decent coverage abilities. I mean, there's nothing more you could ask for from a free safety being able to sit back there and play center field. As far as a player they should trade, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hayes is working on getting his 14 draft picks already.
I have no question that he has at least 6 trades already secured, signed, and sealed. How that'll work out,
Yeah.
will there be draft pick penalties because of it? I don't know. Time will tell. As far as a player they should trade, it might seem crazy, but I'd say cornerback Deontay Jackson. He's fast as hell, and pretty much anybody want him. But you've already got Pride, Horn, and Boyo still at cornerback. You'd have a strong group of DBs already, Chin over the top, and you got the potential to bring in not just a good player, but I think a great player if you move Jackson. So, I mean, you want to talk a blockbuster deal, this is the type of deal that I could think could happen.
Right.
Then as far as contender, pretender, we're going to get better. Bless your heart, you tried. I'm sorry, but this is going to be a bless your heart, you tried. There's no telling how this roster will actually look when we kick off. All I know, it will be much different than what's currently there. I'm left with no other choice, really. Still, there are enough stars on the roster that I expect at least 2 upsets by the Panthers this season.
Yeah, he always seems to upset somebody.
Yep. Their ceiling, 10 to 11 wins, even with all this drama, potentially wild card berth. Especially if you keep the difference makers like Burns, and they've got good speed at wide receiver with Anderson and Moore, and that alone could be good to get you a few wins. Their floor, say 4 to 5 wins. That's if they make huge trades, push the reset button on this roster, and make it a total rebuild. It could be destined for a top 5 draft pick, but maybe that's their plan all along. Hayes is known to be undefeated in the draft on draft day. Moving on to the Falcons and G-Men. Previously, he ran with the Little Giants. What do I expect from them this season? Well, Pitts, a lot of Pitts, but also cursing Matt Ryan's name every time Pitts doesn't score a touchdown. As far as a player they'd be a fool to trade, I'd say Grady Jarrett. He's a stud, rushes the passer as well as any other interior lineman. But personally, I think it'd be a great idea, and he shouldn't listen to this at all, especially if you trade him outside of the division.
This isn't a story that I want to tell myself.
No? All right. As far as a player they should trade, objectively, I'd trade Calvin Ridley. Simply, he's under contract through 22, and it's going to take a fat deal to keep him. So is it really worth it? I'm not so sure. He's a bit of a tweener. He can do everything you want as a receiver, but he doesn't quite have elite size. He doesn't quite have elite speed. Personally, I'd want one of those traits if I'm going to pay top dollar to keep a big-time wide receiver.
Yeah, he's another one like TJ that mixes up his plays pretty good.
Yeah. Plus, if you're going to commit to Pitts, do you really need Riley, whatever. So I don't know. As far as contender, pretender, working to get better, I'm going to have to say working to get better. They need their quarterback of the future because he's not on board with Matt Ryan. And I think there's definitely going to need to be some roster turnover to be able to break into the contender status. Could be next season, but I think by season 3 for sure we see them up in that contender status. Their ceiling for now, 13 to 14 wins, but that would require, I think, riding with Matt Ryan for this season or swinging a blockbuster deal for a young quarterback they could really invest into right away. Perhaps they could overachieve a bit with one of these things that happens, and Tampa Bay, if we throw the ball too much, they could be right there to take the division away from us. As far as their floor, 8 to 9 wins and just outside of the playoffs. They might get a stopgap replacement for Ryan, but that could mean just making do for this season and just basically looking forward to the draft to get that quarterback in the future or in free agency.
He's been known to make some big signings in free agency.
Yeah. So the question is, because we know it's not going to be Ryan, who will be the quarterback in the future for Atlanta? Don't know. Moving on to the West, we have the Seahawks and Pino. Previous team, Seahawks, who later became the Desperados. So what do we expect from them? A name change. Perhaps this time we'll name him after one of his favorite IPAs or some fantastic spicy wing sauce that we've seen him frequently partake of. As a player, they would be fools to trade. I'm gonna say Russell Wilson. We know Pino likes his Longhorn alums at quarterback, and he can likely get a bunch in exchange for Wilson. But this is a special quarterback, and frankly, I'd love to see what his offense could do if they committed to Wilson and kept him for several seasons.
Yeah, he's a game changer, Wilson is.
Yeah, played with him a few times. He is a joy to run with. Just be able to roll out and, throw some on the move and know that ball is still going to be on target. As far as a player they should trade, I'd go ahead and trade Tyler Lockett. He's very good, but he's also creeping up on 30 and likely to lose a step in the very near future. Plus, you've already got Metcalf, so I'd move Lockett now because his value is as high as it will ever be. And then, as far as contender, we're going to get better. I'd say we're going to get better right now. It's one of the harder teams to grade because there's no shortage of playmakers on offense or defense, but there are only 2 players on the offensive and defensive line combined that are rated 80 or better. I think that could really hold them back when they face a stronger team, especially a team with a good front 7. Still, I'm going to put their ceiling at 12 to 13 wins. They could take the division title and even win a playoff game. I mean, if this offense clicks with Wilson and Wagner and Adams are free to make plays, this could be a very difficult team to play. Granted, the scores they're going to have are all going to look like they belong to college basketball games.
Yeah.
Their floor, though, if they push the reset button and send Wilson away, they could be staring at a 5 to 6 win season. Because who knows, they'll end up with a quarterback. I'm sure there's a young Longhorn alum out there somewhere. They'll still score a lot of points, but the Seahawks offense will only be responsible for scoring about a third of those points.
Should be interesting.
It will. Always high scoring, always entertaining. Moving on, we've just got 2 more to go here. We are to the Arizona Cardinals and Hack himself. Previous team, I was going to say, is officially king of the mailmen. As far as what do we expect this season? I have no idea. Been away for a year, so we'd be invigorated or old and slow. Time will tell. As far as a player that you'd be a fool to trade, I've got to say the linebacker / demon Isaiah Simmons. I mean, I'm not saying you should try to get Hack to trade Simmons to. God knows I've considered it. But for the sake of being honest here, I've got to say you should keep Simmons.
Yes. He's staying.
You have to think hard about that one. As far as a player you should trade, I'm going to say one of the wide receivers, either Christian Kirk and Andy Isabella. Hopkins is the present, Moore is the future, and you can get some good value for one of these 2, as unless you're going 4 wide, you're going to have a quality receiver on the bench at all times. And, you can really get something nice, I got to think, for Kirk or Isabella, given they're both quality slot receivers.
Yeah, I've thought about that. I might have something in the works already.
Maybe.
Time will tell.
As far as contender, pretender, we're going to get better, bless your hearts. I have no clue. So I've got to say, I guess working to get better because there's a bunch of great players. Kyler Murray is fantastic. All those wide receivers. Simmons, my favorite player name and strong safety, Buda Baker. It just rolls off the tongue so well. I expect them to start the season slow, but gain some momentum to the end of the season.
You're probably right. I don't know what to expect either. Some days I play great, some days I don't.
As far as the ceiling, I'm going to say if it all goes right, 12 wins and a division title. Murray's a special player, and if he vibes, this offense could be fantastic. And on the defensive side, Watt and Jones are going to be able to cause enough mayhem on their own to give Simmons room to roam. If that happens, they're definitely going to win more often than not. But the floor, I'm just saying, coming back in, if stuff goes rough, we could be looking at a 4 to 5 win team. But if that, of course, could be caused by, a ridiculous work schedule, as we've seen happen in the past, could end up being a top 5 draft pick. Or if anything, if Murray gets clipped up, perhaps, because losing him for any period of time, it's a big downgrade to the position from there.
Right.
No. What do you think? You think you like your ceiling or
I
floor
think
better, Rich?
I like the ceiling, but I'll probably end up with 8 wins.
So splitting the difference there. All right, I can see it.
Yeah.
All right, wrapping it up here, we have the San Francisco 49ers, and going by the username New Look for now. Previously with the Patriots. As far as what do I expect from them this season, they've changed their name since then, but I still expect lots of talk about his D, a bunch of crossing routes, and very aggressive defense. Interpret that as you will. As far as a player, they'd be a fool to trade. Defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw. They've got plenty of great players on defensive front 7, but I think developing this guy into a stud alongside Bosa and potentially Armstead, they'd have a chance to be one of the up there with Washington is one of the biggest problems in trying to move the ball up the middle on them. Not to mention the fact of players just able to generate a pass rush without blitzing.
Yeah, he's gonna be a problem if he mixes up his play calling. But if he gets predictable, I expect the Cardinals to take care of him.
Could happen. It could happen. As far as a player they should trade, I think you deal one of the quarterbacks because you've got 2, Lance and Jimmy G there. And as this whole thing goes, if you got 2, you don't have 1. I think the temptation is going to be to play both of them if you keep them. So your move is to commit to one of them and swing a big deal with the other. I've got the expectation and heard that something may have been worked out. And I think if you move Lance, you're especially going to be able to get a lot for him being a rookie. So maybe even 2 significant players in exchange.
Yeah.
He's not coming to Tampa Bay, unfortunately. I did inquire, and the price was a little over my head. As far as contender, pretender, we're going to get better. Bless your heart, you're tried. It sounds negative to say, but I've got to say pretender at the moment. I say this because while they've got studs and Kittle at tight end and Mostert at running back, I think they lack a true number 1 wide receiver because Deebo Samuel, he's a number 2 in my book. And for this offense to thrive, I think he really needs a guy that's a matchup problem because he's gonna force the ball occasionally. It's gonna happen, and if you have that elite receiver, you're gonna win those matchups. So they've got the talent on the defense, but I still think they're a player or 2 away from wanting to sniff contender status.
It should be a good division if my work doesn't kill me.
Hopefully not. As far as their ceiling, and this would say 14 to 15 wins as much as, because there's a lot of talent there, and they could win a couple playoff games. But I think this would mean that Mostert probably wins the MVP, and they add a playmaker on defense, maybe a pass rusher, maybe a DB, and they'll need someone other than Kittle to give them 1,000+ yards receiving. So therefore implying that they add a receiver or somebody steps up to surpass Deebo Samuel there. As far
Yeah, I
as their
agree with you.
as far as their floor, it could be a 6 to 8 win team, because while they do have those beats in Kittle and Mostert, the drop off behind both of them is significant. And with the third option, in my opinion, being still undetermined, any injuries could really curtail their offensive potential. Still, I think there'll be a struggle to score against, but I mean, if their offense doesn't have that extra punch to it, that defense could be left being relied on a little bit too much.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, that's for sure.
So my pick for the NFC, who I think is going to the Super Bowl there for this season, I think Washington and Philadelphia will flirt with it, but I gotta think Aaron Rodgers is gonna make a ride and get there. I'm going with the Packers for this first season. I think they get to the Super Bowl.
I'm gonna pick Washington.
Washington. So who is your Super Bowl
I pick-
I'm
matchup?
gonna pick Washington, Green Bay, or Philadelphia. I'll go with Washington.
Washington.
I go with the
I think-
49ers.
Okay, all right. I can understand that. I'm thinking we're seeing Browns versus Packers in season 1. I think that's kind of a safe pick. I don't think we'll see a lot of surprises. Maybe in season 2 we see somebody else rise up, but I think the most likely thing to upset that balance, say the wild card, would be the Dolphins getting past the Browns, because I really like that roster in season 1.
Right. It's the Browns could get upset. They could.
We'll see. We don't forget he's playing PS5 as well. So I mean, where
Right.
will his true time
That's
lie?
true.
Will this league be a side chick to him, or will he be committed and play hard? I don't know. Time will tell.
Right.
But anyway, I think that about wraps it up there. Pino, you there, sir?
Still here, man.
All right, man. I think that's about the size of it for tonight. Well,
Great job, man. Appreciate your work.
Hey, I appreciate you guys joining me and getting this together. I'll try to do better next time. Hopefully have something for post trade deadline. It probably a bit more brief, but a little breakdown of what I expect will be a mountain of deals that happen between now and then.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I appreciate
Okay.
you doing this.
Hey, thanks for joining us, Hack. It's an honor for you to take the time to. I know you're a busy man, to come join us and chime in.
Still waiting
Sure,
for
it
that
was
camera
fun.
to come on.
Oh, it's
All
not
right,
up?
guys. All right, guys. We have a great night, and I think that'll do it for tonight.
All right. Good night,
All
fellas.
right. Thanks. Good night.